Good evening and welcome to Place and Economic Development Committee. This is the last PED for this civic year. So welcome to the meeting. This is a public meeting and members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photographing, making an audio recording and providing commentary on proceedings. Please note this meeting is recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting page of the Council's website. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you have left the building, the assembly point is in the High Street opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded to use their microphone when speaking. Thank you. First item on the agenda, the appointment of substitutes.
Yes, Chair, thank you. We do have some substitutes this evening. Richard Udall is here for Jill DeSera. James Stanley is here for Simon Geraghty. And Atif Sadiq is here for Jabba Riaz.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? Adrian?
Item 7 on festivals. I'm the chair of the Elgar Festival.
Anybody else? No? Okay. We don't have any public participation, do we? Thank you, Julian. So, on to the minutes then. I'll page by page. Any comments, just let me know, please. So page 1. No. Page 2. No. Page 3. Thank you. Page 4. Thank you. Page 5. No. Page 6, no. Page 7, no. Page 8, no. Page 9, no, thank you. And then, page 10, they go on. Thank you. And finally, page 11. No. Right, thank you very much. Are there any matters arising? Jessie.
Thank you, Chair. It has been highlighted to me that there was some concern over my use of the term NIMBY at the last meeting, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to clarify that I did not aim this term at a specific individual and certainly not a specific group of residents in any area. And I do acknowledge that in the context of the discussions, it could be construed that way, so I want to take this opportunity to apologize for any misunderstanding and any upset this word may have caused. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessie. Right, before we go on to the matters substantial, I'd like to inform colleagues that item 6 of the agenda has been withdrawn. I am advised that there is an intention to deliver a similar report at the next PED meeting in June. So without much further ado, on to agenda item 5, the proposed committee scorecard for 24-25.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, councillors. We are at that point of the year when we start to consider closing down this year's committee scorecard and starting to compile the scorecard for next year, which will form part of the agenda for business for the new committee when we establish in June. This year is slightly different because of the development of something called the Office for Local Government. So I'm not sure if you've come across this, but it's an organisation being set up by the Department of Levelling Up to specifically to try and provide as it says here, authoritative and accessible data and analysis about the performance of local government and support its improvement. So what it's doing is replicating some of the previous functions of the Audit Commission, but not in the same way that the Audit Commission did it, which was independent of government. This is a organisation set up by the department. Now, along with this, there are some parallel developments. The DLUC has also published guidance around best value and is trying to renew the understanding of what best value means, and is looking at local authorities from the point of view of value for money as well. Those of you who are keeping pace with the settlement know that when we got a little bit of additional money from this year's local government settlement, that came with a caveat that we have to produce a productivity report for the department by the summer. So there is a renewed interest at a national level of trying to understand local authority performance and get some early indicators of whether there are authorities are in trouble or are potentially going to be issuing Section 114 notice and so on and so forth. And so we have to pay attention to that. And in thinking about the committee scorecard approach this year, what I'm thinking is in terms of how we might ensure that we've got sufficient understanding ourselves that we're ahead of the game, that we're not going to get into a position where Oflog come along, tap us on the shoulder and say, what are you up to then? So part of that has been about reviewing the indicators which Oflog have currently published, and no doubt there are going to be many more, but the suite that they've currently got is an Appendix 1. And what this throws up is the fact that there are, the potential for duplication and the potential for missing out on some of these issues. So, for example, relevant to this committee, planning and the speed of processing planning applications is one of the areas which Oflog thinks is very important. Okay, so indulge me for a minute. In my position, I want to produce a report for Oflog. I want to make sure we're ahead of that. But that needs to go to one location, it needs to be a corporate report. So we could end up in a position where we've got data going to this committee and also going to another committee to look at that corporate report. So potentially duplicating activity, potentially getting the different information or reaching different conclusions about that in committees. This is something that happens within committee systems that you need to watch out for. So what's proposed here, and note the recommendation is to consider, nothing's set in stone, nothing's agreed. I'm really interested in your views and how we might take this forward, is that we produce a report primarily for Policy and Resources Committee based around Oflog, and therefore don't present detailed indicators for each of the separate committees. What we like committee, or what's in my mind, is that committees would focus on the priority projects and activities, which are half of the scorecard, and not focus on performance indicators as such. Now, I would sort of say, well, perhaps we should step back a little bit from that and think about what indicators support the priorities, because those are the ones that are really key. So what I'd be looking for and getting feedback from this committee is, of those indicators which are presented in Appendix 2, I think it is, Appendix 3, which are the current ones, which ones should we be looking to keep? Are there some which we think are really important? And a really obvious example is that there is a priority under Future High Street Fund Retail Unit Property Enhancements, and then there's a performance indicator below that, which is Property Enhancements Grant Spend. So that really gives us an indication of where we are in terms of delivering on that priority. So that's the thinking. As I say, it's nothing set in stone at the moment, but what this would mean is what we'll be looking back at when we come back in June is a set of priorities, projects and activities, and maybe one or two indicators which support those activities rather than the suite of regular quarterly performance reporting that we do at the moment. Okay, I'm more than happy to get ideas and views and expressions of interest on that, either within the committee or separately if people want to write and let me know what they think. And then we'll come back in June with a revised scorecard and see where we go from there. Okay, any questions, Chair? Happy to take those.
Okay. Thank you. Opening to committee members. Adrian?
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I was a bit concerned about when I heard about this a while ago, and more concerned, I suppose, just from some of the stuff that you said, Shane, that one of the aims of the government is to be able to monitor authorities who are experiencing difficulties the simplest way to deal with that, of course, is for national government to fund local government properly, instead of letting us get hoist every year by a funding settlement that is designed not to allow us to do things that local people want us to do. But I suppose that's not going to be altered in the near future. So we'll concentrate on what there is in front of us. And the concern, I think, is that it comes from a variety of areas. In your alternative options considered, you suggest that having all these KPIs across 6 committees does not provide a clear corporate view of the overall performance. Now, presumably, you didn't come to that conclusion just because you wrote this report. Presumably, that's an issue that has been going on since we've been collecting these KPIs, and it's convenient to be able to make the change when the change is being foisted upon us, if you like. So I think that, you know, if we want to be reviewing those 200 KPIs and reviewing the way in which we do things, and that it is becoming such an important weapon, tool, analytical process of government for us, then maybe we should tackle it a slightly different way. And rather than reports going to individual committees, we should have perhaps have a seminar on it or a discussion opportunity, because while there are some merits in what is being proposed here, there are also quite a few demerits, I think. One of them being that it seems to place the policy committee at a higher, more strategic level than the other committees. And what we said when we invented the committee system was that all the committees would be similar, and one would not oversee the work of another. And in doing this, we're actually sort of going to be giving powers to P&R to allocate work and priorities to other committees. So, given that it's all a little bit up in the air at the moment anyway, given that there's going to be a new council elected in May, would it not be a good idea to shelve this momentarily, consider another way of looking at it, and perhaps get the new council, get members of the new council to be able to have a discursive approach to it before something comes to council or appropriate committees to actually agree what it is that we're going to what it is that we're going to collate and how we do it.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Adrian. Yeah, I take many of those points. In terms of just a couple to focus on. In terms of the primacy of committees, that is well understood, and the intention perhaps is not terribly well expressed here, but if we're going to take a committee, which has a corporate remit, then policy and resources clearly has to be it. And the intention was that where you've got things which, for example, the planning indicator, well, the right committee to look into issues around that is this one. So how do you have a mechanism whereby things which are in the remit of the policy and resources committee purely for the purposes of monitoring then extends into the PED committee, where, and the phrase is in the Constitution, to determine matters in respect of the areas under its consideration. So it's less about saying policy and resources committee is more important and will choose or not choose to hand it over to PED to consider. You know, there's almost, that will be default. That will happen automatically if there is an issue in respect of those indicators which merits that there is something here which needs attention. Right? I mean, that's the point of the performance measures, isn't it, really? To say, well, there's an issue here. This is something we need to look at. Where's the right place to look at it? Well, then we'll go to the relevant committee to do that. In terms of timing, as I say, we're being driven to some extent by the department, which is putting timing on what we need to do. We've got to produce a productivity report by July, for example, and they'll be looking for us to to respond effectively to what Oflog are saying. There is, by the way, a parallel piece of work we're doing within the audit committee about looking at our internal control environment, which is also picking this up. So that it seems to me that the opportunity is there. post-election to put things on a new footing and work in a new way and start as you mean to go on, as it were. So that's partly why I think now is a good time to do this. But yeah, entirely take the point, and we've always taken this point, that when we get to the June committees, that's the right time to be setting the agenda for that committee. And, you know, let's have this discussion so we're informed at that point to have that, you know, with as many views on the table as we currently have. But absolutely, you know, this is just simply about getting feedback and ideas, and there's nothing agreed or set in stone. More than happy to hear what everybody has to say.
James?
Chair, thanks very much. I think there's a lot in what Adrian has to say, actually, to be honest. I think the triggering a discussion at this point is useful, and I'm sure members around this table and the council generally will have a view on this. I think primarily the conversation will take place post-elections. I think there's probably quite an extensive list of constitutional subjects that might occupy us for some considerable time once we come back. But that said, I think that the key point to remember is that KPIs should inform the debate within each committee, within each subject. And at the moment, I think they're running almost too parallel, and that the KPIs don't really cross over and really inform the debate as much as they should do. So, I mean, anything that might be done to sort of bring them more into you know, so that they actually have a real value to what we're discussing, I think I'd be happy to support. But you know, let's kick off the conversation now and then see where we are when we come back.
Thank you, James. Tom?
Thank you very much, Chair, and Shane, thank you for this introductory report. First of all, just a quick statement and observation. I'm really pleased that we are talking about the overall performance in the case there's a summary at the beginning of the agenda when everybody is still fresh and coffee is working. So that's brilliant. The one thing which I would like to ask is some clarification as to the difference between what you are saying here, Shane, in your report, and what we discussed on the 6th of December in the Audit and Governance. What would be the difference between the two performance reports that we discussed?
Through you, Chair. That discussion, Tom, to my mind, was focused around best value, principally. So we're looking at how we demonstrate best value and how do we know that we're carrying out the things that we do with value for money. Whereas these indicators primarily are about performance. You know, have we achieved that step? Have we achieved that target that we've set for ourselves? So the report, which for Audit Committee, which will be published tomorrow, if people are interested in that, is it incorporates a much wider set of things. So it's looking at the annual governance statement, it's looking at the off-log indicators themselves as a group, it's looking at whether or not our policies and strategies are up to date, our systems are sound. So it's a much wider, much broader remit for that. And of course it's corporate, because the Audit Committee is a corporate committee, whereas this is a focus within a set of specific service areas. So it's different in those two respects, I think.
Thank you again, Chair. Well, in this case, I think it's worthwhile to start the discussion. I think I was actually quite critical of what Oflog is suggesting, and in the sense that it wasn't as complete and comprehensive, and perhaps the spotlight wasn't on the right kind of issues, especially if you are in our situation in the two-tier local authority. Other than that, I mean, I don't share Councillor Stanley's confidence. It's not when we are back, if we are back. It will be good to look at it after the local elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Unless there are any further comments on the report, we'll put the recommendations to the vote on block, I think, recommendations 1.1 and 1.2, unless anybody objects. No, that's great then. So on block, are all those in favour? Thank you. All those against? None, and no abstentions, or any abstentions, I should ask, not assume. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I think that was unanimous. On to agenda item 7 then, the community festivals. Thank you, Zoe.
No, this report gives information about our events and festivals programme and also an update on the Cultural Development Fund programme that has recently come to an end. Our colleague Elaine, who was commissioned to support and direct the Community Festivals programme through CDF, has joined us so she can answer some of your questions. And we also have a short film to show you that is the evaluation of what the Community Festivals did and where we think we should take it next. We have a package of funding that we've pulled together to make sure that we can continue the festivals for next year through UKC SPF and other funding streams. And we also are doing some fundraising as well to source funding from external sources. But we'll show you the film and you can take a look at some of the activities we've done through the festivals.
Okay, Chair, yeah, just give me one moment and I'll get the film up for you.
So as part of the original Cultural Development Fund bid, we wanted to make sure, as well as developing a large-scale festivals programme, that we also put in some support for community festivals, grassroots festivals. So we wanted to make sure that we had opportunity for new festivals to come forward, as well as for existing festivals to have a place to grow and develop. So we put together a mixture of work which included a range of specialist mentoring for those organisations, as well as a generic programme. And what we tried to do was create a bespoke programme for each of them.
We brokered a lot of specialists into the conversations with them. So people like Juliet Hardy from Stockton International Riverside Festival came and engaged with the carnival. We had people like Dr. Rob Milford, who's a kind of national specialist in governance of organisations, come and work with them on their organisational structures. And we had really kind of big name fundraisers, people like Kirsty Falconer, who work with big organisations. The Community Festival programme runs alongside the main professional programme of festival development in the city. And actually, Community Festivals really benefited from that because they were able to see themselves as part of that development journey and see that actually they were playing a role in a wider city festival ambition. And I think that was very empowering for them. David Edmonds, who's festival director for the Arches Festivals, actually was able to play a role in the programme. The individual festivals not only were able to spend time with him, perhaps actually on their sites where the events happened, and he was able to offer suggestions, give advice, challenge them with new ideas and innovations, but also he was able to meet them as a group and present to them new ideas and thinking about practices in staging festivals.
Worcester as a festival city, that growth will continue. I think we've had a really amazing start over the last 4 years, and I think that mixed, rich pot that is starting to kind of come out of Worcester will continue to grow. So it's very much cementing itself as a festival city, but I think that growth needs to continue, and people need to continue to be brave and bold and ambitious and provide the resources for that to happen. But there's no question that the audiences in the city love festivals and want more of them.
A challenge to go above and beyond. We really wanted to get into the core of culture and what it means to be from the South Asian community and to weave that into the fabric of the life of the city.
The workshops have been really helpful for our lovely Arvo team to upskill and learn lots of new things.
In terms of the Soundings project, I wouldn't say that anything like this has happened within Worcester. It's certainly bringing in international artists into Worcester, which is great.
It's been a really enriching process for me as one of the carnival organisers to be that involved in bringing together the artists and the community.
It's been great because it means that I'm going to different areas of Worcester, I'm stepping outside of my area. I'm working with different communities. Communities that may not kind of like consider that they have a part in the carnival.
It's enabled people who are on the edge of the city, on the periphery, who are less well served, to really feel part of the city and to really feel that they're involved, cherished and valued as part of Worcester.
What's really come across to me is their open-mindedness. What we tried to do was create a space for them to be creative and to dream and to think big. And I think that they've embraced that wholeheartedly, and they've kind of been able to think probably beyond what they thought their own expectations were. These relationships don't grow overnight. It takes time, and it also takes trust and respect on both sides. And if we're going to nurture new ideas, new ways of thinking, new ways of developing, then we've got to invest time to allow that to happen. I think these 4 festivals have changed the cultural landscape of the city, and that's really important. There are some gaps in our cultural needs, and those have been filled. And I think what it's proved to me is that working in partnership, you gain a greater product and you have a greater impact. And the whole purpose of this programme was to embed these new skills and to embed more ambitious thinking and widening reach into the groups that exist here already. And for me, they've delivered on a professional level. But let's remember, they are all volunteer-led, and they've been able to do that because of their passion and their drive for what they believe in. And I'm really excited to see what happens next. So they've all got ways that they can evolve, and they've all got kind of skills to be able to do that going forward. And I think the next 2 years within Worcester City, there's going to be some really exciting developments.
So as you can see, the festivals and events programmes, if we can commit to them, they train, they give us skills, they give us confidence, they give a feel-good feeling to the city, and they also have an impact on our economic development because we get footfall, we get external visitors coming into the city. So as much as possible, we'd like to continue it for the future and build on what we've got so far. Any questions?
Hannah?
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question, it's just a comment. I think I went to every single one of those, and that video just makes me so proud of our city and my friends and my colleagues and my residents, and to see Love the Arbo and all of those things. It's just such a gorgeous video. Can we just share it everywhere, please? Because for me, that really encapsulates what our city is. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Tom?
Thank you very much, Chair. There's often doom and gloom in this building, and when we talked about limitations and financial crisis and all kinds of things, but this is so lovely, positive and hopeful to see. So massive congratulations not only to your team and the way that you support those events, but also to everybody who's involved in them. As in terms of suggestions and trying to offer something in a way of challenge, I suppose, we've had now 3 or 4 editions of Worcester Film Festival as well. It's been voted as one of the top independent festivals in the country. They had submissions from all over the world, I think 40 countries or thereabouts. It really puts Worcester on the map, and considering that we are right smack in the middle between, well, sort of, between Birmingham and Bristol, where there is quite a lot of creatives working in those centres, it would be really interesting to see what we can do with them and what kind of support we can offer to them. But just well done, massive well done.
We are working with Hendrik, actually. He's part of the Cultural Compact, so he'll be involved in all of the planning moving forward. And we're working directly with them at the moment to look at funding for their programme.
And I think that, yes, I mean, I've got you, I've got a couple of others as well. I think that's a good point. Elaine, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think, I've been really impressed with these 4 groups that were identified by you as a city. They've really shown sort of growth and development. They've been so passionate. I think the bit that doesn't show in the film, because it's happened in the last year since CDF has finished, is that they've all brought in huge amounts of additional income into the city. If you look back at the report on the table, there's kind of £200,000 worth of additional money that's come in through Arts Council and other sources, which I think without the support that we've been able to offer wouldn't have happened. I think we have to remember these are volunteers. We're asking them to almost act as professional organisations, and I think without the support that we've been able to give them, that wouldn't have happened. And the bit that's really important is that we've been able to grow their ambitions, we've been able to link them into other agendas. So for instance, the Carnival last year, with our Arts Council grants, worked with an organisation called 101 Creation Space, and they made 3 sustainable green floats that can come back year on year. And in terms of starting to address the green agenda in the city and making sure that, you know, at some point, you know, the big lorries aren't always the only thing that happen in the carnival, actually has been really important. And once we've made that investment in those 3 floats, they'll be able to come year on year in terms of being able to work with artists in different groups. And we've been able to, like they said in the report, work with groups outside of the city centre and bring those people kind of into the city and get some ownership in terms of what's happening. And I think if you kind of look at Worcester Mellor, for example, you know, they've really, there's a brand new organisation that's established themselves. They've just become a charity. They've brought in, you know, they've got a £100,000 grant from Arts Council, which is their 2nd application, which for a brand new organisation is a massive achievement. And, you know, it's being looked at across the region as a group of best practice of something that happens very different from what a normal Mellor would produce. So again, it's just that pride in Worcester and what we're able to offer, I think. And with Worcester Music Festival, again, it's a whole, you know, some of the feedback, something that always sticks in my mind is lucky Worcester, we don't get this in London because of the type of programme. Now, how often do we say that in Worcester? You know, kind of, I've only been here 6 years, but, you know, I haven't heard that before. So I think, you know, for community-led organisations, they've done a fantastic and amazing job. And the only thing I would say that without the support they get, that becomes more difficult because, you know, they are volunteers and we're asking them to be professional. And so, you know, they don't have necessarily the connections with other things within the city, within the region, the knowledge to be able to kind of talk to Arts Council and put applications in. So that's the bit that I think going forward we need to just think about how we support. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. I've got Adrian, then Richard, then Owen.
Thanks. I mean, I would say that I had the opportunity to be, well, still, I don't think I've been removed yet, to chair the Arches project and certainly seeing how that developed and worked through, you know, the challenges of COVID and everything else has been really good. I've got a couple of concerns. One is that there were references in the report, in the Seven Arts Appendix report, to the cultural strategy. We still don't seem to have launched the cultural strategy as a city. We had it at this committee to approve it, but we've not really seen any development from that, and I think that needs to happen. Also, there was something mentioned at the end of the film from you, Elaine, and it creeps up in the report, you know, about what we've got to look forward to. Well, we haven't got any money. So what is it that we're looking forward to? What is it that the council is and the wider community is going to be able to commit to support in order to maintain this momentum? And I guess there's sort of just a minor personal point. There's a mention of lots of festivals in here, but it doesn't mention the Elgar Festival, which again was one which was established by the City Council. I thought it might well have been featured somewhere in the report. Thank you.
Apologies, that was my fault. Elgar Festival got mixed. It's not that we don't love it and appreciate it, it just accidentally got missed. As far as the cultural strategy, that is being worked. We are working on the action plan within the cultural strategy on various activities, including with the compact, the cultural compact. So it is on the agenda and it is being delivered against. We can bring a report back to PED committee if it would help to say where we're going with that moving forward. And as we don't have a huge amount of money, no council does, for, particularly for cultural activities, but we have enough to manage our programme for the next year at least. There are various different funding streams that are around because we've started to develop the skills of those community organisations to be able to understand the external funding agenda. We can support them and help them to source external funding to deliver some of that activity. So it can be Arts Council, but there are various other streams out there that we can help them to access those and to apply for funding from those pots of money. It would be good to get some of that coming into Worcester and building on what we've already done.
Thanks, Zoe. Richard?
Thank you. Yeah, I too welcome this report, and I think the video was absolutely terrific, and yeah, it should be seen by a wider audience. 2 points which are not criticisms, are more observations from my point of view. First of all, very little on the west side of Worcester. Is that river really a barrier to trying to take community activity across the city? I know some of the arts, some of the painting festival did take place in Cripplegate Park, but a lot more could be done, and I'm just feel sad when we're not utilising some of the advantages which we have in the West Bank. The second comment which I would have, many people tell me they would have gone to these festivals if they'd have known about them. So a question about marketing. How are we with marketing and promoting these events to make sure that they are known to a wider audience? I regularly get people say to me, I saw there was a light festival in Worcester last night. I would have gone if I'd have known. And people don't know, and that does concern me. And an idea and a suggestion for a future festival, please don't laugh at me, I've been saying this for years, and I've been ignored for years, but I think there is room in Worcester for an ice cream festival. A festival where we can celebrate a beautiful product made locally. There are a number of ice cream producers locally, where we can use pedal power to get it around the city, especially the riverside, and we can even have vegan ice cream to make sure the Daily Mail has got something to talk about. So please, can we have some consideration to celebrating this quality product, which can be in sweet or savoury form. Cheese on toast ice cream is fantastic. Garlic ice cream is wonderful. Please give it some consideration as an opportunity for the future. I'm more than willing to be there to help in any way I can, even if it's just as a taster.
But if I may, before I get to you, Owen, you know, on the west side, being just a wee bit parochial, but not necessarily so. A couple of years ago, we had light festival events on the outskirts of the city. So we did have Indines Green and Lights Festival, Ronkswood, and across the city. And I think they were enjoyed by those residents. So I think it would be an idea to try and take more stuff out to those areas which are the hard to reach areas. Yeah. Marketing. Oh.
No, it's fine. Just to answer some of that, maybe those concerns. So this year with the Light Festival, we did work in those communities, but what we also did was bring that work back into the city. And the same thing happened with the carnival. So we've done some of the workshops out in the community, but brought it back into the city as part of the main festival. There's kind of pros and cons of both, because you get local communities involved, but they feel a bit isolated from the bigger events. So we've tried something slightly different this year to try and kind of integrate them into the main part of whether it's the carnival or the light night. So yeah.
Thanks, Elaine. And again, it wasn't a criticism. It was just, you know, we must try and do more for those hard to reach places. Owen.
Thanks, Chair. I don't have a lot to say. Councillor Cooper said a lot of what I would have said myself anyway. But there was one point on page 52 that my attention was drawn to that I didn't like reading, which is in the orange box where it says Worcester at times can be a very divided city. Now, I don't agree with that sentiment, and there are plenty of places in the country where people are genuinely divided and they live separate lives, and I don't think that statement really applies to Worcester. I think we're being far too critical in that statement there. Just a comment.
Can I just say that was a comment from a genuine person. It's not a statement that we've put into it. It was a comment, so it's. I'm a genuine person. No, I know. I'm just saying that I haven't made it up. It has come from a member of the public.
Jessie.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased to see this video as well, and I share the comments about how proud I feel to be on the city. And it's really great to see so many community-led projects. but as someone who's married to someone who works in the film industry, I'm always very reluctant when I see so many arts projects being an over-reliance on volunteers, because a lot of the people who do these things, and they get really good at what they do that because they need to be able to make a living at it. So I guess my question is regarding about the vulnerability that this might have, considering how much contribution they make to the city. A lot of the artists will be self-employed. If there is any scope for commercial partnerships to create some safety, not just grants, and because we all know that when there are hard times, self-employed artists are the first ones to bear the brunt of those cuts. So, I mean, are there any plans to work with industries in a way, or commercial arts organizations, to create steady revenue to protect, and so that these efforts are not just reliant on grants and charity donations and volunteers?
I think part of the problem is that everything that happens with those community groups is they're project-based. So in order to sustain a year-long programme, you've got to have either far more volunteers or a lot more money to come in. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we've been trying to support them, is to kind of think about how we can broaden out their income generation. But I think, you know, none of them have the resources, the capacity, or probably the inclination to run all year round, so that, you know, it takes them all year to work on one project, I guess. So I think it's quite difficult to answer that, if I'm honest, without making them professional organisations, which they're not. I feel like I'm not answering your question. I'm not sure how to answer your question, if that makes sense, without changing the pure nature of why the groups exist. But I think I've tried to work with them to think a little bit more about how they can grow and develop, which might then attract more income. I mean, so for instance, the Arts Council applications, we always put in fees to pay self-employed artists, for instance. So whilst the groups are volunteer-led, they are employing professional artists to deliver their work, if that makes sense. But, you know, Seven Arts is I'm going to say a professional organisation. We also rely on grants, and so are also at risk. And I think everyone in the cultural sector, to be honest, is facing those kind of challenges at the moment. So, yeah, I'm not sure I haven't answered your question at all, I'm afraid.
That's okay. Thank you very much. That answers as much as I would expect an answer.
Thank you, everybody. Are there any more comments, questions? No? Are we happy to accept, to note the content of the report then? Thank you. On to agenda item 8 then, the WCT Skills Delivery Plan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Good evening. This report brings together 3 reports that went through the previous committee cycle. We had a report, Policy and Resources, approved capital works under the Town Investment Plan. Communities Committee received the WCT annual report, and members of this committee will recall approving allocation of UK SPF funding, some of which will be delivered by the Community Trust. So the purpose of the report really is to pull all of that together and give members a background and a forward look as to how we're going to move forward delivering skills. So at section 2, a reminder that the Community Trust was set up in 2010. I think there might be a couple of people in this room who were with the council at that time. Joined 3 charities together and took on the management of the council's community centres. And WCT is an independent charity governed by a board of trustees, and we do have 5 city councillors as observers who receive the papers and are able to attend the meetings to observe. And the 6 community centres and the building block construction skills training facility, they're covered by a management agreement with the council, the city council. That commenced in October 2019. The current version runs till September 2040, coinciding with the lease periods for each centre. Under the existing management agreement, the council do provide an annual contribution, a funding grant for WCT, and in the current year that stands at £84,000. There's more detail about the content of the agreement. At 2.11, just draw your attention to the lease agreements. The council is responsible for repair and maintenance costs, and WCT makes a contribution towards that. That's been reformed a couple of times in previous years. Currently, the net effect is the council contributes around £50,000 per annum towards the maintenance of the centres. And the WCT plan is to reduce that council contribution down to zero by 27-28. So then moving on to the town investment plan, the community skills project, that's part of the town investment plan that was first approved by Policy and Resources back in January 2021. This project is funding capital improvements at a number of community centres across the city, mostly the councils, also a couple of other facilities as well, and looking to build a new construction training facility in Dines Green. And the procurement of those works was approved on the 6th of February by Policy and Resources Committee. Just draw your attention to 2.30. The original plan was anticipated that the ongoing maintenance and running costs of the centres would be funded from the training that was being delivered. Town investment plan and the Towns Fund is a capital grant, so that funding would be other grants, some of which were yet to be announced, so it was future planning. The skills environment is very much grant funded, often on a year-on-year basis. And in the interim, it's a review of this has shown that WCT aren't an accredited training organisation, so I found it more difficult to deliver some of the construction skills in particular, which has led to the building block 1 being underutilised. And WCT, with the council, have explored potential partners to operate both of the construction centres to really enhance that delivery of training and able us to maximise the utilisation of those facilities. A potential partner has been identified for the delivery of this construction training, and Policy and Resources have approved delegation to officers to progress that with WCT, subject to further due diligence. 2.35 reminds members of the UK SPF funding approved by this committee for basic life and career skills and also digital skills. And these will be delivered across all of the centres at a small scale with small class numbers. Section 3 gives some detail of the numbers and locations of the skills delivery training. So I won't go through all of that detail at the moment. That's all there for you. From pre-entry courses up to level 3 and apprenticeships delivered right across the city in areas of need. Section 4 details the future works. We've commenced the procurement of the capital works, looking to do the refurbishment of the community centres over the summer. Building block 2 is programmed to complete in early next year, early 2025. So works to Fairfield will be the end of this year. St Peter's Village Hall, at the moment, this is a grant from the City Council towards a larger project to build a new village hall, championed by the Village Hall Association. And at 4.1, it details that whilst the Village Hall Association have pulled a number of funding streams together, they are awaiting the outcome of a bid to the National Lottery, which is crucial. The lottery bid is 250,000. So a decision is expected during the summer, and if the lottery bid is unsuccessful, then we'll bring a further report to committee to consider alternative options for use of the Council's Towns Fund grant. But there is a good degree of optimism that that lottery bid will be successful. It's at stage 2 at the moment. 4.12 gives you details of the proposed sublease for building block 1 and building block 2. Looking at a 4+2 lease. And that will build in provision for community access managed by WCT as part of the delivery of the building block. Then further work will be a review of the WCT management agreement and the leases. The environment's changed somewhat with different funding and the capital works being carried out, so officers have agreed with WCT to undertake a review throughout the rest of this year and to reform some of those legal agreements. And then finally, there's a good deal of detail in the two appendices. Appendix 1 is an outline of anticipated delivery in year 1 by WCT. I think it's important to note that the actual location of that training will be subject to identification of what we call hyperlocal needs assessments. So that training will go to the individual communities and the centres where there is the most need. One of the underpinning objectives of the Towns Fund, of this project, is to deliver training actually in the communities of need, rather than requiring people to trek across the city or to educational establishments where they may be less familiar and comfortable with attending. And then Appendix 2 gives a similar outline plan for the building block 1 and 2. And there'll be a quarterly review between the Council and WCT to oversee this. And then finally, over the parades, just a note that we're currently in the process of concluding their legal agreements for WCT to deliver those 2 elements of UK SPF, which is for the coming financial year. So, whizzed through that, Chair. I'm very happy to take questions.
Thank you, David. Any questions? Richard?
Thank you, Chair, and I'm relieved to hear some of the things which has just been said about building block and especially building block 2. And I do wonder whether the officers can clarify some of the concerns which have been expressed to me locally and elsewhere about what's being proposed locally in Downs Green, especially after the changes which happened to building block 1 recently. Which is, the feeling now is that it's going to be mostly focused purely on apprenticeships and less access for community access and volunteer training. And that is a serious concern because we took some political risks to support building block 2, and we did so on the basis that there would be some training available for people in the local area, and I'm relieved to hear that's still being suggested. But I'm also hearing from other sources that will be extremely limited, and that the opportunities for Mr. Joe Bloggs in Drake Avenue to learn plastering at the building block in Downs Green will be remote, if nothing, not at all. So I just seek some reassurances that events have not overtaken this report, and after what recent events have took place in London building block, and we will not see any significant changes to Downs Green as a result.
Thank you. I think it's fair to say that there is a balance to be struck here. This is a capital funding that we've got to build the building block. We don't have revenue funding in order to operate it. So there does need to be revenue funding brought in for those training courses to enable the operation to fund itself. The aspiration certainly is that there will be community use and lower level training. We're also invested in refurbishment of part of the foyer to the Green Centre, so that will enhance the training facilities there. So there will be a blend. I think it's something that it will be helpful for officers and WCT to talk to local members as we enter into this sublease and as the agreement unfolds.
Chair, it does still concern me when I hear it's just an aspiration. We do really, I think, require a bit more of an aspiration for us to continue to give this some credence and support locally. We did sell it to the residents on the basis that there would be community access. We can't say now that we have an aspiration for that. We need to ensure that somehow it does happen.
I mean,
but accept the idea that we do need to talk, and that might be a good idea for us, that something to happen in the very near future, if possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think rather than trying to give you an absolute assurance on a particular level of detail here, it would be helpful for us to have a conversation.
And I find myself agreeing with you, Richard, but that would be obvious. Perhaps there's a chance for a report into this committee, you know, halfway through the project.
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, it'll all be subject to quarterly review, so it'd be appropriate to bring a report back on performance to the committee.
Thank you, David. Hannah, and then Jen.
Thank you, Chair. I remember when we talked about this before, about the UK SPS funding and skills delivery plans, that there would be green jobs within that. You know, obviously in light of the climate emergency and the retrofit need and green digital skills, that this is going to be something we're going to need more and more of. And I was assured through Dave and Zoe that this would be something that would be looked at, and especially the gender imbalance within the green skills sector and the gender pay gap would be encouraged. I wonder if you could give me some reassurances, please. Thank you.
I can give you probably a high-level answer. I'm aware that the green skills element is out to procurement at the moment, so that's live. I think there were some difficulties in securing a provider the first round. Green skills is something that's been discussed quite extensively through the Towns Fund project, and part of the both building blocks. That'll be part of the focus of those, because that's the way the construction trade is moving. I think officers might be able to, colleagues might be able to provide you a little bit more detail, perhaps outside of the meeting.
Hannah. James.
Chair, thanks very much. I found myself in the slightly not everyday occurrence of agreeing with Councillor Udall on this particular point. I think the key point to remember is that, yes, there is a need to bring higher and more enhanced skill sets into what the structure of WCT and the various centres can offer. But what we need to remember is that there are people in my area, and I think in Richards as well, and in Owens, whose skill sets are, frankly, they don't exist. And their levels of confidence, their social isolation, their exposure to all sorts of criminality, that it is extremely dangerous. And over the years, we've begun to make some really positive inroads into this by simply offering them skills that actually relate to their lives and that might actually then benefit them in searching and getting a job, but also simply feeling in themselves that they're part of the wider community. And I strongly feel that we need to get the balance right here, because the question about the skill sets that potentially will be on offer in the future, I'm totally behind. But let's not lose those people who are, they are part of the communities that those centres serve. And I think as we go forward, that should be something that underpins everything that we think, the PED committees of the future should always have that in their thoughts, so to speak.
Thank you. The Appendix 1 details some of lower level skills. It may not necessarily be apparent actually from the jargon perhaps that's there, but some of that is very, very basic skills about how to engage in the job market or how to engage in education, how to use digital devices to book appointments, etc. English as a second language. And also, I think going back to my previous comment about an aspiration in the building block, that funding will be sought to deliver skills at all levels. And just to reiterate, though, to deliver those skills and that training, funding is required for the tutors and for the facility for the ongoing running costs.
I'm sure that, I'm encouraged by that, but
Thank you, James. Thank you, David. And I'm struggling to find it myself now, and I read this report and used the content at a small speech I made earlier to the Business and Skills Conference in the Cricket Club. That there are a set of ambitions that we have that come out of this skills delivery plan, which include, improving the life of those people that benefit from the training that we're giving them. Making them more employable, reintroducing them to the workplace. And so I would stress, I think, David, that I think the next committee would like to see or hear more about progress as and when you do your quarterly reviews. So thank you for that. So unless there's any more comment, are we happy to note the contents of this report? Okay, thank you everybody. We're making good time. So agenda item 9, the Protect Duty, Protection of Premises, Martin's Law.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is an information report on a draft bill which is currently going through Parliament. If or when the bill becomes legislation, there is a strong indication that significant guidance will be made available prior to implementation of the new legislation. Where we are at the moment is obviously we've got, as part of this report, we've got 2 recommendations: to note the incoming legislation and also to note the measures currently being undertaken by City Council to support staff to understand and comply with the new legislation if and when it becomes law. Background section 2 sets out the where we've got to with regard to the draft bill. Section 3 identifies the primary elements of the draft bill, such as the type of premises to be covered. As indicated, this is draft and we can't categorically say that what is within the draft bill will become forwards, but there is quite a large schedule within the draft bill and it does include retail, leisure, entertainment and similar types of uses, all of which have public access, whether it's express or implied permission going forward. There is a 2-tier approach to this proposed draft bill, with a standard tier where it's 100 to 799 capacity, and then an enhanced tier where we've got 800 plus capacity. What you should be aware is there is currently a consultation taking place. It finishes the 18th of March, and that relates to the standard tier, and it was with regard to concerns raised by the Home Affairs Select Commission with regard to a potential burden on businesses as it was set out in the current draft bill. So that expect some changes to come forward as part of that. As part of the draft bill, there is obviously as well a proposal to have a regulator will be created. This role will be to educate, promote and also enforce the new legislation. In section 4, looks at potential implications for the City Council. There's 2 areas where the City Council will be potentially impacted on this. As owner of premises, we will need to comply with any future legislation coming forward, and also as local authority. There may well be implications with regard to licensing, planning, and these can be seen with regard to recent changes such as the overlay, security overlay measures within the REBA work stages. So we can expect to see some changes, and also we will need to be working with the regulator. The regulator, as I've said, we don't know who that will be at this current stage. Section 5 sets out the current initiatives which we're working through as part of the City Council. It tends to focus on training and engaging with specialist organisations to ensure that we're in a relatively comfortable position going forwards on this subject matter. And that's where we are at this current stage. So I'm happy to answer any questions or queries if there are any.
Thank you. Anybody? Brilliant. Okay. Without any further comment, I'll be happy to note the content of this report. That's brilliant. Thank you, everybody. So before we wind up for the evening, I'd like to thank you all for the last year. It's been a wonderful job chairing you all. You've been great colleagues. Thank you very much. However, there are 3 certainties in life: death, taxes, and the fact that there will be a PED meeting in June. I look forward to seeing you all next civic year.